Hi, Clément.
Hi there.
How's it going?
Very good, thank you. And you?
Good, good. Yeah, thanks so much for chatting with me today. Just so that everyone knows, Clément is the amazing perfumer behind Belnu. He's behind both Rose Study and Bergamot Brio. And I just thought it would be fun for us to chat, for people to understand a little bit more about your background. And then obviously we can go into both Rose Study and Bergamot and how you approach them and the whole process and learn about everything from your perspective. So, the first thing I just wanted to chat about was, at what point in your life did you know that you wanted to be a perfumer? And how did you even get into this field?
Yeah. So basically, until I was 18, I had no idea that the job of being a perfumer existed. I just knew I love smelling stuff. And first, I graduated from high school. I had a big introspection into my life, and I was like, what do I enjoy doing without getting bored? So it was a strange question, but smelling was to me the obvious answer. And I basically just Googled job where you can smell all day long, and it came into the wine industry or the perfume industry, and I just decided this is what I want to do with my life. So I just focused on that.
Amazing. And where did you grow up and where are you based right now?
I grew up a little bit around France, but mostly in the south of France. I spent a lot of time in Marseille, not far from Grasse actually, in Toulouse, a little bit around Paris, and all around different places. And I also spent a little time in the UK and then in the US.
Amazing. And can you explain a little bit about like how you started studying perfume and what your first job was in the field and all of that?
Yeah. So just to go back a little bit, the background into my studies, I studied biohealth engineering, which is a little bit of chemistry, and that gave me opportunity to work into cosmetic companies, including Robertet, which is a company I'm at the moment. And this company, I started as a lab tech, and they have this training program, internal training program to become a perfumer in Grasse. So I entered the school in Grasse for 1 year and then with Jean-François Lati, a master perfumer, and then with Michel Almerac in Paris for another year. And that's how I was trained for 2 years. First, we started with all the raw materials, natural and synthetics, and then we came more into smaller cores, mixing a few ingredients together, and then building up slowly into full fragrances.
And how long does it take for a perfumer to have to get acquainted with all these different scents and ingredients and almost like your palette that you work with? I know it's a very extensive process.
I discovered like the most the most important material, the 400 to 500, you have to master really to decipher every fragrance and to start building everything for the first like 6 months. But then the time that you play with these fragrances, you make a call. The 2 years of school training, and then the years as a junior perfumer, the 3 years as a junior perfumer count into this years of training. So at least 5 years, because you have the basic materials, but then you discovered so many that you can play with that they all come into your own palette. And slowly you discovered what your favorite and your palette is becoming.
And does each perfumer kind of have their own library of accords? Because that's my understanding, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Exactly. I think it's depending on our sensitivity. We all start with the same materials, but um, uh, while we create, we end up sort of using the same materials, not the same 10 ones, but the same 200 to 300, for example. And in a way that become your signature because you are very familiar with this material and you really know how they react with each other and you really master them. Of course, you don't forget, just to give you an idea of the numbers, we do have, let's say, 6 to 7 thousand materials available, around 1,500 that we regularly use, and around 3 to 400 that are really our core material that are part of our signature. And these materials, yes, we do have to master them, and because that become like a second scent. We know how to use them, and yes.
Amazing. So interesting. Okay, one thing I also wanted to ask you about is what is the difference between to you a perfume and a scent? Because in the industry, we have all these different words for describing a scent, a fragrance, a perfume. How do you distinguish perfume and scent?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. To me, scent is everything that surrounds you. It can be the cooking, it can be the nature in the street, anywhere that something is scented, smelling, because scent was applied to it all, because it diffused scent by itself, that's scent. Perfume is actually, to me, when you can control it and actually you have the opportunity to create and put that scent onto your body. So you're in control and you can define and decide what your scent and what you're going to emit and how you're going to feel. You don't really, you sense, you're not always in control. When perfume, you can control it for yourself.
That's really interesting. It's almost like scent is a feeling and something that's more kind of embedded in the environment, and a perfume is something that's more of a work of art and it's created by an artist or a perfumer.
That's the way I see yeah. And also for me, the perfume has a more personal aspects to it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, at Belnu, I know we talk a lot about how essential oils have this power to affect your mood and how fragrance has this ability to change how you feel. I just want to hear a little bit about your perspective on fragrance and the role it plays in how people feel about themselves and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, to me, just to more and more people are aware of this, but no, not everybody. That actually the way our brain is capable, emotion talks direct. Sense. That's a good one. Sense
Yeah.
talk directly to our emotions. They're directly connected to the part of the emotion in our brain, and I think that's why it's so different and so important in a way that yeah, that's that's the main part of perfume that can create an emotion instantly through the scent. It doesn't have to be descriptible. You don't have to explain why, but some people react to scents in a way that create an effect on them. So an emotion, it can be wellness, it can be sadness, it can be bring memories from your childhood. Sometimes you just feel good and you don't know why, but perfume are this very specific and special power of reaching you very deep.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting how perfume and fragrance have changed over the years. At one point it was marketed as this thing to really, you should buy this to get someone to like approve of you or like you. And I think now the conversation has really shifted to fragrance is something that helps us tap into ourselves. And, there's science there that it does change how we feel. So I just love that part of the industry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing I want to ask about is this idea of naturals. And,
Yes.
we're a clean brand, which obviously is
Yeah.
not a regulated word, but we have defined clean in our own way at Belnu. And a lot of people ask us, are you 100% natural? And we're intentionally not. And I know why we're not, but I want to hear from your perspective
Yes.
what your thoughts are on that.
So, well, let's talk about a little bit about natural. Natural are amazing. They're just nature providing us with amazing things. No doubt about this. And that's also one of the reasons why we connect so much with them, because this has been deeply anchored within ourselves as human, with our relationship with nature. And as perfumer, we can access to hundreds and hundreds of natural essential oil absolutes that are even basically very interesting olfactively because they are so complex. Each molecule, each essential oil is made of hundreds of different molecules and then bring an exceptional complexity to fragrances. And that's why when you mix essential oils together, in a way, you're mixing hundreds and hundreds of molecules together that you can't always master. And that's why synthetics come into place. These safe synthetics are very interesting because they the essential oils are here to bring pillars and specific, it can be emotions or effect or just olfactive qualities to your fragrance. And some synthetics are here to create the bonds or to structure your fragrance and also bring olfactive pictures that can't be reachable with the naturals. They do have both their interest, and it's way easier to to master a synthetic molecule which is on its own versus an essential oil which is made of hundreds of molecules. So that way you need both, and because nature is what it is, it's bringing hundreds of different things, good or bad. And as in the industry, we're following the highest standard to make sure that everything we put in our fragrances are 100% safe. And that's the same for synthetics. We are making sure that the sourcing, the way it's developed, the chemistry behind it, it's clean. And that's why it's not a bad word to use that. And also, using synthetics help us to balance our take on nature. And I think the whole answer is a question of balance, where you're taking the best of both. And if you're going 100% in one or the other direction, you're missing something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've told a few people this, but this idea of 100% natural essential oils versus something that's really highly potent, very concentrated, almost like an absolute. And I've had skin reactions to both. So people think, clean is 100% natural, just using 100% essential oil, but that's super harsh on your skin.
Exactly.
And
You wouldn't rub yourself with the first plant you find in nature, and everybody got hurt with or allergies from plants and things like that. That's why our role is super important, because in a way, we are very careful with the natural we use and the seed that we use to make sure that doesn't go into our customer skin.
exactly. Wouldn't you say that? I mean, my understanding is with clean, it's not the synthetics that make something not clean. It's actually all the additives, the preservatives, the UV filters, potentially, whatever it is. But those are the things that make something not clean.
It can be. It can be. To me, I always say that I'm not sure about the expression, but the dose is a poison. So if it's exact same thing as nature, if you're heating a full jar of nutmeg powder, you're probably gonna have a lot of issues, and that's the same thing from synthetics. And it takes a lot of time and of studies to understand what are the issues with this material. And as we mentioned before, it's easier to avoid some synthetics that have these proven bad effects than sometimes it is for natural, that's why we are very careful with that.
Yeah. Super interesting. Okay, let's get into the fragrances that you created for Belnu. Okay, I think we can first talk about Rose Steady, and I want you to just tell us a little bit about kind of how the process works with, a founder, creative director. They give you a brief for a fragrance, and what's that initial process look like, and how did it look like for Rose Steady?
Well, in your case, and to me, that's my favorite way of working, is we are handle the brief. So it means inspiration, ideas, and sometimes it comes with a mood board. And that's what you provided me with. And that's helping a lot, because you have pictures, the colors, which are very important to me to understand what are it's going to be in my imagination, the color of the fragrance, the way I smell it, and also keywords like what are the emotion you're trying to convey. Is there any specific ingredient that are important to you and you want them to also convey an emotion in your fragrance? And all of that is compiled together in a few pages, and that's where I start from. Sometimes it talks, sometimes it talks a little bit less, and then I'm asking the person to get a little bit more deeper into the conversation. But with Belnu, it talked to me immediately for both fragrances.
Amazing. And what was kind of your first reaction when you got the brief for Rose Study? Like what did you think where you were going to take it? Because Rose was obviously the core part of what we wanted to include. But there was also references to woods and this idea of being grounded and sort of referencing this forest that I used to live in. So
yeah,
tell me about like where your head went initially and what got you excited.
It kind of popped in for this one, and it's going to be a little bit different for Bergamot, but to me, I kind of imagined the fragrance instantly. Of course, I didn't have the formula or the ingredients, but I had decided that the rose was wrapped in a bowl of woody nuts and musk. And the way you describe the emotion of grounding, the color code with a little bit of dark red, dark colors. I think there were like a black and white forest, thing like that. That's the way, I'm going to be very specific here, but that's the way I picture a Vetolite, which is a very, very dark, woody, grounding, soothing musk. And so that I just connected with it, and then I built around this a few materials and idea I had in mind. But it was pretty fast to imagine the fragrance and the way the impression, the character it would need to convey the emotion you were looking at.
I love it. Yeah, I just think the musk really makes it unique. I mean, obviously the woods do as well, but
Yeah.
the musk and the rose combined are, for me, what make Rose Study really special. Can you walk us through the olfactory journey of Rose Study? Maybe just start by talking about the top notes and how you chose those, and kind of move into the heart and the base
Yeah.
and explain that to people.
Exactly. Yes, definitely. So yeah, of course, I'm gonna go through that. But the rose was the main ingredient into that fragrance, and I wanted and in a way some intensity and some connection to the top notes. And to me, frankincense was the key ingredient to start with, because I already had this material in the base, the musk in my mind of alvetolide, and frankincense was the perfect material to actually take it from the bottom and bring it to the top and start it from the beginning. And that was super interesting to get it. And I wanted that forest, that wrapping sensation to start from the top notes. So most of the time we will see woody nuts into the dry notes, because that's what's lasting on the fragrance. I wanted the cashmere wood to come into place first. Like when you walk into a forest and you feel good, it's not because you feel good after and you remember the sensation. It's when you walk into the forest. So that was very important to start with that. And we use a bay leaf accord. We can talk about a little bit more about this later. But the bay leaf, I had two reasons to use it. First, there's a very technical reason. This material is perfect to connect the rose and the intense in a way that it has the spiciness that the natural rose has, and it also has this sort of vibrance that frankincense brings. And it was technically in a way that the molecule were the bonding, instead of making 1+1 makes 2, 1+1 makes 3. And this time it was just perfect to that. And yeah, olfactively, it's just like it creates a bridge between the frankincense and the rose. It was just a way to connect to the hot notes.
Can you talk a little bit about, I don't think people know not everyone knows what an accord is, first of all.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
not only that, can you explain what cashmere woods is? Because cashmere woods is obviously an accord, but I don't think people know exactly what that means.
Yeah, so an accord is the sort of short formula made of a few different materials. Most of the time they're gonna be safe synthetics, but they can also be naturals, as long as you reach the olfactive aspect you're looking for. And sometimes, because, for example, a material can't be supplied by nature because you're protecting an endangered species, or for example, this material, when distilled, brings toxic materials, you are obliged, or for example, that scent doesn't exist in nature, you are in a way obliged to look for accord replacement or opportunities to get the same olfactive characteristic of something you smelled before, but in a usable way of in your formula, in a way.
And then what about cashmere woods specifically?
Yeah.
Is that accord that is specific to your library, or is that
Yeah.
universal?
So that's the way I talk about it. I think few other perfumer might talk about this the same way. It's an accord built around a molecule called cashmeran, and it's a woody, very vibrant. When I mentioned cashmeran, the first pictures I got in my mind is beige. It's a very beige material. It has, in a way, the heat that sand could have, in a way that he hits you and it diffuses with a warming light. It's very interesting material. and I build with natural and synthetic molecules around to create this velvety sensation.
Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about the heart. So the rose, the sandalwood, the fig leaf. How did you, first of all, how did you decide what rose you wanted to use? And then maybe talk a bit about the sandalwood and the fig leaf.
Yeah.
One thing I think that's interesting about the rose, I just want to add for everyone to know, is we went back and forth on modifications in regards to how much rose essential oil to use. I think that's interesting to maybe tell people about and how that
Definitely.
affects fragrance.
So all the fragrance, well, rose steady is called rose steady, but that doesn't mean that you want to be your fragrance to only smell rose and be overpowering. It's all a question of balance, and when it's unbalanced, you're missing the step, and you're not conveying the emotion so much, because instead of bringing an emotion, people's gonna smell it and might say, I'm just getting a lot of rose, but that doesn't talk to me in a way. So it's very important to master. And yes, as you say, we went through iteration to make sure that it was here and it was bringing something and it was at the heart, but it was not overshadowing the rest of the fragrance in a way.
And can you talk a little about the Damascus rose and why
Yeah.
you worked with that particular rose?
Yeah, so we can use Rose Damascena or Rose Santifolia, but I wanted to use the Damascena because to me it's a little bit deeper, it has a more floral, and the fruitiness of the rose was super interesting in that fragrance because it was creating not a sweetness to the fragrance, but something very comforting to it, and not going into the very vibrant, opulent rose. The rose Damascena, to bring that fruitiness, was bringing a sort of comfort to the rose and a sort of gentle touch to it.
I think one thing that stands out too, just to go back to the heart notes that are associated with the rose, is the fig leaf. So, do you want to talk a little bit
Yeah,
about how you chose that and what the effect of fig leaf is in this fragrance?
yeah. So fig leaf, as we mentioned before, we don't distill fig leaf, but we do have clean molecules to mimic and to create that sensation. To me, it's very important that the fragrance comes with contrast, that it's not linear, that materials are replying to each other. And the fig leaf aspect to me was contrasting with the sandalwood. We'll come to it later, but it was bringing a sort of freshness, a little bit of light into the forest, like when you have this light that comes into the wood and hits the ground. And it also have a sort of happy note to it that also are linked to the wood itself. So it was both bringing the contrast and also making the link, sorry, with the sandalwood.
Amazing. Okay. And then I think I know about why you put sandalwood in the heart because it leads to these woodier base notes.
Yeah.
But do you talk a little bit about the sandalwood and then how you go into the base?
Yeah. If you go a little bit back into the cashmere wood we used in the tom nuts, that was bringing down in a way and grounding this velvety nut. Olfactively, it also pairs very, very well with the rose, and it creates a sort of tenderness to the fragrance, a sort of creaminess, gently, without creating any sweetness to the fragrance.
Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about the musk and the patchouli heart. I mean, you already kind of talked about the musk, but why patchouli heart and how is patchouli heart different than just normal patchouli essential oil?
Yeah. So usually the way that patchouli is distilled, so when we talk about distillation, it means boiling the patchouli into water, and then you cool down the vapor that comes from it, and you end up with the bowl where you got at the bottom the water and the oil at top. And what we do to get the what's called the heart of the patchouli is when you boil, the first vapor that comes out, you set it aside. You take then for the vapor that comes during the mid part of the distillation. You take that you take that specific part, and at the end, the bottom nuts, the leftover, is set on the other side. And that part has very interesting olfactive qualities. It's It's deeper, it's richer. There's a sort of fruitiness that came to it, that replies perfectly to the fruitiness of the rose we were mentioning before. It doesn't have the animalic or resinous scent that we are traditionally used to with the traditional patchouli. So to me, you're left with the purest part of the patchouli, which are this herbal grounding feeling to it, without all the animalic that can that that are very interesting in a way, but that we did not want to convey into the fragrance.
One of my favorite parts about learning about the ingredients is just how you can have one ingredient, but all these different ways of extracting it or distilling it to create all these sub ingredients. And I think people don't understand how complex
You
this
agree?
process really is. And I just think it's so interesting to share that with people. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
thanks for.
awesome because and that's why nature we were mentioning before. Nature is also fascinating because you you're not left with patchouli. Into patchouli, there's like dozens of various way of just in a way selecting what's interesting to it.
Right. Yeah. And it just, you select that method based off of what the other notes are and the other ingredients to see what pairs with it. So, it's just fascinating. Okay, so I think Rose Steady is a really great fragrance to add to your collection if you're hesitant about rose because it's
Yeah.
very unique. So maybe just talk a little bit about like how you see the fragrance from your eyes.
Yeah, like the way I see and I scent and I wear this fragrance is I was not 10 years ago I was not a big rose lover because I
Yeah,
was too much used of like direct into rose smells and I in my imagination it was always a little bit soapy, very rose into the I mean by the color of it. And rose is so much more. It's why it might be the number one ingredient for perfume. Okay, it can bring so much more, and that much more part is what make this fragrance is different to me. Of course, if you love rose, you're gonna recognize it because we used rose. It's present, and you're gonna recognize the petally quality to it. You're gonna recognize the bouquet from the fragrance, but holding all the ingredients that are around, that are wrapping the rose, that are create a darker, bringing a new color actually to the rose. This is where the interesting part is. And personally, when people wear it and when our people are smelling it, I've never heard anybody say you're wearing a rose.
right.
And that's what's interesting to it. However, if you say I'm wearing rose teddy, people are going to be, oh, it's a rose, and they're going to understand where it is. But they do enter by the sensation it provides, by that cooling, that grounding effect of the musk, instead of going in through the rose as we traditionally do with rose fragrances.
Yeah. It's really interesting you say actually, if someone were to wear this and they didn't know it was called Rose Steady, would they know that there was rose in it? I've never thought about that. And I think that's pretty interesting because you may not know, unless you're very attuned to
Yeah,
fragrance and notes like you are, you may not pick it up. So yeah,
definitely.
I love
And
that
if
about
you
it.
go into the technical part, there's way more road than there's in many, many rose fragrances. But because, as we mentioned before about balance, there's so much more with what's around that yet that balance where even if the material is put almost in excess, because there's so much balance and come with the rest, you end up with the fragrance and not just the sum of materials.
Yeah, super interesting. Well, I love it. It's my favorite woody, musky rose out there. And I don't think there's a lot of rose fragrances on the market that smell like this. So I know we're biased, but I think it's pretty unique and beautiful. Should we talk a little bit about Bergamot Brio?
Sure.
And yeah, so I think we can start with Bergamot Brio, just kind of the same way we started with Rose Study. Like, what was your first reaction when you got the brief, and what were the kind of things that you were excited about and wanted to pursue when you saw that bergamot was going to be the main hero ingredient in this one?
It's nice because bergamot is like little bit like rose in its own way. It's a very traditional material of fragrances we've been using for hundred of years, literally. And from the brief, from the picture you sent us, there was a lot of energy conveyed, which was very nice. And in fragrances, most of the time, bergamot Of course, it's used because it smells good and it has very interesting olfactive freshness, greenness, almost like a tea effect to it. But most of the time, it's not the star of the fragrance. So that was nice to have this material that have been used as a support to other materials to actually make it the maybe not the place it deserves, but definitely to shed light on it.
So why is that? Why do you think bergamot is so ubiquitous and used so much in fragrance? Because it's very common to be
Yeah.
used. And is it easy to work with, or why is it just tell us about that?
I think it's because of its natural qualities. As just mentioned just before, the citrus part of it brings a lot of freshness to the fragrance. There's a florality to it, almost like a green tea vibe that makes it easy to pair with floral scents and floral fragrances. The green part of it, the almost very zesty, even more zesty than actual lemon, make it very very vivid, and it's perfect for masculine fragrances. So all these qualities make it easy to put it in these different kind of fills. Because if you use it correctly, you'll push the florality, you'll push the masculinity, you'll push the freshness, and it finds place so easily. And also because we use it so much, if we are very down to earth, people are used to smell it. So it's when they're gonna smell a fragrance with it, it's gonna talk to their memory in a way. So it's always interesting to talk to people's memory, and important too.
Yeah, and it's interesting because out of all the citruses that we know about, like common ones like orange, lime, lemon,
Yes.
and then bergamot, it's kind of the least used in everyday life, like outside of fragrance, and it's almost like rare in this way.
Yeah, actually, I'm sometimes because I do cook a lot, and bergamot is like I love bergamot tea, but I want to cook with it too. It's almost impossible to actually purchase one, as you say, it's one of the most used ingredients to fragrances, and you can eat it. It's there's no issue with it.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the next hero top note, which is pink pepper.
Yeah,
And can you talk a little bit about the origin of it and why the origin
yes,
of our pink pepper is significant to your background
yeah.
and why we use pink pepper in this scent? Because I think pink pepper is like the second most important note almost in this fragrance
Yeah.
for me.
So
Yeah.
there was a nice coincidence. That's not the reason why I used it, but it happened that our pink pepper comes from an island in the Pacific Ocean called the Reunion Island, where I spent some time a few years ago, which is a luxurious island made of. There's a big volcano. There's like mountains. You also have the beach, and it's a way of living and conveying energy that really resonated to me when I was there. For the material itself, it's super interesting because it's a very vibrant, a very productive material. It has a lot of energy. Let's say energy to it. It's a little bit bitter, so it kind of joins the bitterness of the zest of the bergamot, so it's perfect to it. But it also creates some vivacity. I'm not sure that's the word. Yeah, vivacity to it, and that spiciness. The spiciness are almost like when you eating a spice on your tongue, and it creates like a tickling effect. And that tickling effect is like super into the fragrance because that make it alive in a way.
Yeah. For sure. I think it's perfect for just kind of the mood that we wanted to convey with Bergamot Brio. And then also pink pepper essential oil is known to be kind of like awakening and make you feel more alive. So it's works scientifically
It's
and effectively.
it's super interesting how the proven effect of essential oils most of the time do match the scent to it.
Right, right. They're connected and it makes sense, right? Yeah. Okay. The next one, orange blossom flower. So, couple of things. I think this one's really interesting because it's like a citrus and it's a floral, and that
Yeah.
makes it 100% upcycled because you can use the whole part of the orange blossom. So, can you just tell people a little bit about that process?
Yeah, so the orange tree is called the perfumer tree because you literally use every part of it, even the branches. You can distill everything from the flower, from the petals, to the new leaves, to the branch I was mentioning before. And even when you distillate the flowers themselves, and you end up with an absolute. As I mentioned before, when you create that vapor and you end up with vapor and oil, that vapor that condenses into water can be used to create a new absolute instead of throwing it away or into your sink in a way. You can distill that and extract new scent from it, which are super interesting. And that way it upcycled, because instead of throwing the components of all these processes, you're keeping them and you're making something even more beautiful with it.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's almost like the example you gave with the patchouli heart, sort of,
Yeah,
where you
exactly.
utilize all these different
Yeah.
parts of it, different extraction techniques or distillation techniques, and
Yes.
essentially use the entire
And
plant.
just to go back to the patchouli quickly, as mentioned, we're keeping the heart, but we're using the top and the bottom to create amazing products too, which is nothing is thrown away.
Right. So interesting. Okay. So maybe let's move into the heart notes. I know
Yeah.
that orange blossom flower has that floral kind of effect to it, and that leads to these really nice floral heart notes. Maybe talk about those.
Yeah, orange flower was the perfect link between the top and the midnight, because of course the orange flower comes from a citrus tree. So it does have this citrus quality to it, and it naturally pairs very well with the citrus family. But also it's very floral. There's almost like a honey jasmine aspect to it, and that's why jasmine was like, to me, a perfect nut for the whole nut. It do have this also grounding effect. It's rich, it's floral. It's a bit like honey-like with apricot vibes. It's a very playful material. It's very interesting to play with it, and to make it vivid, and to in a way make this heart more dynamic and convey that energy we had in the top notes with the bergamot. We use the lavender and the verbena. So the verbena first, because despite it being an aromatic plant, we also considering to be into the citrus family, because it's also very citrusy, very leafy. So it brought that citrus nut into a more leafy green aspect, and that green aspect was perfect to pair with lavender.
Amazing. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the base now. So, in the base notes, we have sage, we have amber, amongst other things. Why the sage? Because I think the sage is actually very prominent in the dry down. So, maybe talk a little bit about why you
Yeah.
chose that. And yeah.
To me, sage is like the elder brother of lavender. It's a little bit more grown up in a way. It also have this aromatic freshness to it, but just behind, after a few hours, into a more soothing, grounding nut, like the herbs in the summer when the night comes and everything cools down, and you have this like grounding greenness from the plants and from the garden around you. And that's what sage bring into the fragrance. You wear it, you put a new spray on yourself during the day to make yourself more dynamic and bring a lift to your day. And then at the end of the day, the fragrance itself just grounds you down naturally with the sage, which is to me
Yeah.
super interesting, because as we mentioned with the pink pepper, bringing life to the fragrance, all the materials create like a temporality to it. The fragrance evolve even within its own effect.
Yeah. And also, I love what you said about this idea of like sage in a garden. I think,
Yeah.
out of all of these notes, people have heard of a lot of them, but I do think sage is one of those ones where most people, it's nostalgic to them, it's familiar. They've smelled it, whether in cooking or in a garden or just wherever. It's universally kind of familiar, I would say. So that's what I love about it. So let's talk a little bit about the base note amber. We did a lot of different modifications with Bergamot Brio, kind of iterating on what this base note would be, this final base note, and we landed on amber. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the amber brings to the scent and why it was our favorite?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So in that specific case, amber was bringing some texture and some some light to the fragrance. And when we were trying different sort of ambers, the light was not always correct in a way that sometimes it was bringing shadow or darkness to the fragrance, and we wanted really to be that projecting luminous aspect of the amber to come from the top to the bottom notes, and that's what we end up with this specific molecule to creating that spark and that light into every aspect of the fragrance, including the dry notes, which is super important. To be that grounding effect was super important, but we wanted the fragrance to yeah, I mean light. Not light in a way it evaporates quickly, but light in the way of luminous was the main characteristic of it.
Yeah, because it's interesting you describe amber as being light and luminous because for me,
Yeah.
I think of it as warm. Warmth? Would
Yes,
you say they're kind of associated, light and warmth, so it makes sense. But
it does make sense. And also traditionally in fragrances, when we mention amber, we meant vanilla or benzoin or material that are resi. That's where green chemistry is super interesting. So it can actually bring scents that don't exist in nature, and it could bring new qualities, new colors to scents that we would be left out without.
okay, let's just to wrap up our Bergamot Brio chat, what makes this fragrance special and why do you love it?
We did mention a little bit talking about the different parts of the fragrance. It's the fragrance is vivid. It really creates that vibrant effect. It does lift you up through its inner quality of having this very dynamic bergamot, having the pink berries just pushing it and makes it sparkling. The amber is just showing light and project that energy around you, but you also have through the day that grounding quality that comes, and it's very vivid. So I won't say that you're not wearing the same fragrance in the morning that the one you have in the evening, but you're just following a day and a story with the fragrance, and that's very nice to have something that just accompany you through the day.
100%. I feel like versatility is just
Yeah.
a huge factor in this scent. You can wear it in the morning to feel alive and wake up. You can wear it out to dinner. Complex, it's rich, it's bold, but it has all these like energizing and, awakening properties. So it's just beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It was so cool to chat, and let's do this again soon because I think it's really
Definitely.
cool to hear your thoughts. Yeah. All right. Talk soon, Clement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.